All right. Okay, so we are recording. And what I am going to be doing today is I'm going to be switching back and forth between two screens. One screen will be the one you should see on your screen right now, and that is the AWD database-driven website development array exercises. So that's one of the ones, but as I go through each problem then, I'm going to have to stop my share, start my share again, and I'm going to go into, oh, I don't even have it up here, so let me bring it up. I'm going to come in and go into Visual Studio Code then after that. All right, so I'm going to go back and forth between this, all right, and this, all right. Now, what I did on here, just so you know, all I did was I created a simple document and I put every single one of the exercises in there, all right? But I'm not even going to go from that. I tried doing it that way, but it's really hard still switching back and forth. I mean, I can try that. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to come in and I'm going to go into live server. All right. Now, Michael, you're the only one here, so you will have to tell me once I go into live server, and of course it didn't let me in, open with live server. All right. Can you see my live server on the screen? Does yours say array exercises solutions?
I see the I still just see your Visual Studio Code. I do
Okay,
not see
and
the live
that's
server.
fine. That's fine. That's what I wanted to know. All right. So let me bring that up because it might end up being easier to do it this way. I might be able to do it all through one screen. I'm not sure. Now, can you see the thing that says array exercises solutions?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to take this screen and I'm going to go to inspect and I'm going to go to console. All right. And now, hopefully, what you can see over here, what you'll be able to see at least somewhat over here is each question. I'm trying to make that a little smaller so it's easier for you to read. No, that's not going to help because we want this to be big. All right. Well, and like I said, this was the quandary I had. If I bring it up here and I make it big, then where I have to type is real little. If I make this real little, all right, so in other words, if I squish this like that, then you can't see those. So, like I said, I guess I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna go back and forth between these two. So I'm gonna switch back and forth between the Word document right here and what I just showed you. So let's just look at these one at a time. All right. So the first thing I want to do, and it's pretty simple, is I want to define a function that's called no spaces. And basically what I want it to do is to take this, and you can see if you look in here, there are some leading spaces and some trailing spaces on some of these different things. And I want to run this no spaces function on this right here, and I want it to come back and look like this. In other words, I want all of the spaces that are in there to be removed. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's get started then. And like I said, this is just going to be a matter of me constantly switching back and forth between my shares. If there is a better way of doing it than the way I'm doing it, I don't know what that is. All right. So for this first one, I'm going to write a function and I'm going to call it no spaces. Okay. And it's going to pass in an array. What I'm going to do for each one of these is I'm going to call my array, like this is problem 1. So I'm going to call it ARR1. For problem 2, it'll be ARR2, etc. if I have to create an array. So this will be ARR1. So this is just going to be an array that I'm going to pass in. Now, when you're in your console like this, if I go and hit enter right now, I'm going to get an error message because it tries in the console, it tries to take whatever you're typing in and execute it. Well, this is a partial statement, so it's not going to work. But if I hold down on the shift key and I hit enter, it allows me to go down to a new line. And I just wanted you to see that because that's what I'm going to be doing. So what I want to do in here is I want to return my array, which is arr1.map. And what I want to do is I want it to say, take each one of these names that I'm passing in, Captain America, etc., and I want to change it to name.trim. So in other words, as each one of these array elements comes in here, what I want to do, all right, so what I want to do then is I want to take each one of these, run it through each element, and I want it to remove those spaces. Hopefully what I just said made sense. All right. So let me go down to the next line and I'm going to go right to here and I'm going to grab that array. All right. And that array was, we have another joiner.
Yeah, it looks like it. I can
Yep.
we can admit them
Yeah,
too,
you
so
can
I can
admit,
just do
yes.
that.
Yeah. Oh, I know you can because all the teams meetings that I have to go to for Rankin, I end up admitting more people than the other people do. So yeah. So I've got it. It says he's being admitted, but we'll see. All right. So I'm going to do all that. And then I'm going to jump over. Where is number one? Come on. Where are you? So don't worry if you can't see this. It's not going to hurt anything. All right. So I want to call that with this. So in other words, when you look at this, I'm calling no spaces, and that better have an S or this isn't going to work. So I'm calling no spaces and I'm passing in this array. You can notice that there are some leading spaces here and here. There are some trailing spaces here, etc. And what is going to happen is it should run through each one of those elements, mapping each one and running the trim function on each one. All right, so let's see if it works. So I've now got a new array, and you'll notice that none of them have any spaces in there. And I can even do this. There they are. So does that make sense what I have done?
Yep.
All right. So the key thing there is when you run the map function like this, all right, what I'm doing is I am changing the original array. All right. You can see I've mapped through and I've changed this into this, this into this, etc. Also notice with Captain America, because you know this, with the trim function, it does not remove any spaces you've got between different words. All right, so that's the first one. I don't know if you could, it still said that he wasn't admitted. So I don't, Clayton, I don't know if you're there or not. All right, so that was the first one.
I'm here.
All right, great. So I'm going to console.clear. Right? And I'm going to go on to the second one. So the second problem, and I'm not going to, I don't know if it helps to keep going back and forth or if that confuses the heck out of you when I change my share. So in other words, when I change my share here and I go in and I put in a new share and I go back into my Word document, wherever the heck that is. There it is. So I just did number one. Here's number two. So I want to show you this, all right? And then I want to jump back into where I get into the console mode and I run it. All right. When I wrote the key for this, I kind of did a practice run, and we may only do five or six of these an hour. This might take 2 or 3 hours. But to me, it's worth it because I want you to get a feel for arrow functions, for using map, for using reduce, for using the rest and spread parameters, etc. So even though it, like I said, this may be a little long, I think it's going to be worth it. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll find out. All right. So I want to write a function called convert miles to kilometers right there. All right. And I want it to convert an array of values from miles to kilometers. And I want it to use the map method like we just did. I want it to run through that. Then when we're done, I want it to go in and take, all right, I want it to take all those numbers and I want to add them up and I want them to want it to tell me the total number of kilometers that I have when I'm finished. And again, if that doesn't totally make sense, follow along. Feel free to ask questions as I jump back in here. All right, so for this one, we're going to write a function. And as I said, it's called convert miles to kilometers. Let's keep, yeah, we'll do that. Let me do that. So function, convert miles to kilometers. All right. And I'm going to pass an array in there. So I'll pass ARR2, which I have not yet created. All right. And Clayton, I don't know if you heard this part, but right now, when you are in the console like this, and I'm starting to do more and more of my testing for client-side JavaScript in the console, but if I'm in here right now, I'm not going to do it. But if I hit the enter key, I'm going to get an error message because the console will try to execute this line of code, which, as you can tell with a beginning curly and no ending curly, is incomplete. But if I hold down on the shift key and I hit enter, it allows me to go down to a new line. All right, there's somebody new coming in if one of you wants to let them in. All right, so I'm going to say in here, return arr2.map, and I'm going to say in here, for each mile that's in here, I want you to go and run the arrow function of mile times 1.609. And what is 1.609? That's the number of kilometers in a mile. All right, so I'm going to hit this again, and I'm going to put in that. All right. Now, when we're all done with this, I want to run another function. And that function is going to say the total elo distance. All right. And I'm going to pass in what's called an accumulator, and this is going to be the current value. Again, I'll go over all of this when we finish. All right, and I just wanted to say return ACC plus CUR. All right, and then hit Control Enter, go back. All right, now I've got two functions written. Now I want to call them. Okay, so when I do the first one, I'm going to create this array. So I'm going to let ARR2, that's my array. I'm just going to give it some random values. It doesn't matter. So 1, 10, 13.6, and 18.23. They have no meaning. I just literally pull those values out. All right. So there's my array. Okay. Now that I've got that array, I want to be able to call this function and I want to pass in this array. So what this should do, all right, what this should do is it should take the 1, multiply it by 1609 and come back with 1.609, then the 10, then the 13, then the 23. We'll see in just a second if indeed that happens. All right. So again, I want to take ARR2 and pass that as a parameter. So I want to call convert miles to kilometers. And I want to pass in ARR2. All right. Finally, when we're done, I want to call total. All right. But before we do that, let's just hit enter here and see if this works. So it came in and it multiplied the 1 by 1.609, then the 10 by 1609, then the 13.6, except you get the idea. All right. And then what we want to do next is we want to do this total distance. All right. So I don't know if I can just call total kilo distance like that, if it'll take it. Okay, it's going to come back NAN. Trying to remember what I did here because I ran into this problem before. But the bottom line is this. I don't even care right now about this one, but I want to discuss this one. When you run the map function goes through, unless you tell it otherwise, it goes through every array element and it acts upon it. You are going to look in here, you are going to see examples of map, of reduce, of filter. All right. And these are some of the, the rest and and spread. I want you to see these because these are things that you are going to encounter, all right, as we go on in here. All right. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to just skip this one for now. If I can remember what the problem was, I'll fix it during the break. All right. Then jumping back, because again, like I said, I'm going to keep doing this and jump back and forth. All right, so I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to do a new share, and I'm going to go back into Word. So I've done number 1, all of it, and most of number 2. But now, square and sum the array elements using the arrow function and find the average of the array. Now I'm going to keep this small. I could make a really huge array, but I'm not going to do that. I mean, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. So this is question 3. I'm going to jump back again and stop my share and restart my share in here. Okay. So I'm just going to create let ARR3 equal, and it's going to be a new array. And I'll just put 5 numbers in here: 12, 34, 56, -7, and 128. All right. Again, there's no significance to those numbers. They're not even the ones I used when I tested. All right. But the first thing that I want to do is I want to square those numbers. All right. And there's different ways we can do this. What if I had asked you to do this in the AWD1111 class? Probably you would have come in there and used a for loop. That's what I would have done. And then just taken each one of the array elements and multiplied it by 2. All right. Or I should say by itself. So we could do that and it would work just fine. But it's even easier. So I'm going to say here const, and I'm going to call this square, because that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to set that equal to what? Well, I'm going to set that equal to my array2.map. All right. And I'm going to take each number that's in there. So each number, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to multiply it by itself. Just like that. All right. Now, do I expect that to totally make sense? No. But what this is going to do, the way you've got to look at this is map says go through all of these. Num is the current array element. So what this should do, and I'll log this out in a minute, is it should log out 144, whatever that is squared, whatever that is squared, 49, and whatever that is squared, if this works. All right. After we do this, then what we want to do is we want to find the average of what's in there. And again, how would we typically do that? Well, we would come in and add these up inside of a for loop. And then when we fell out of the for loop, we would take the sum of these and we would divide them by the number of elements we had. All right. And it isn't hard, it's a few lines of code. But again, what we can do in here is we can actually do all of this in one line of code. So I'll just call it AVG equal, and we're going to say square, which is what we just did, dot reduce. All right, and we will again have an accumulator, and we will have a current value. And we were going to put in here ACC plus CUR, comma, 0, divided by the array name, which is ARR2. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we want to divide, dot length. So let me go back and let's try to wrap our heads around what's going on here. This is going to run all by itself. It is going to go and create something new called square. It'll be a new array that'll have 12 squared in it as the 0th element, 34 squared as the element 1, 56 squared is element 2, -7 squared is element 3, and 128 squared is element 4. Then this line that we're just working on right here, that word wrapped, is going to say what we want to do is we want to grab each one of those. We're going to have this thing that's called accumulator. We're just shortening it to ACC. We could call these things in here anything we wanted to. So the first time through there, this is going to be 0. This is the initial value right here of this. So we are going to add to that 12 squared, and then add to what that is, 34 squared, then add to that 56 squared, then add to that -7 squared, etc. To see whether or not this worked, we're going to log them. So I'm going to do a console dot log, and first I'll log square, and then I will do another console dot log, and I will log out whatever we call that. I think it was AVG. All right. So let me hit enter now, and notice what we have in here. Okay. So what did I screw up? Probably something. ARR. Oh, I call that ARR3, and I call that ARR2. Well, that's just stupid on my part. So let's fix that. So this has got to be a 2. And I think that's the only thing I did wrong in here. Let's quickly look. All right, so I'm going to hit enter. All right, no, I stood still wrong. 3, oh, because I got a 2 there. Good gosh, Jeff. That's got to be a 3 as well. So let's look at this entire thing before I hit enter again. We've got an array with 5 elements in it. Then we're telling it to iterate its way through each of those array elements, square it by multiplying it by itself, create a new array, and as you map your way through it, put each value into that new array. Then we're saying, hey, we've got this thing called average, and we want you to go through and add up all those things in that new array and divide by the length of the array. So again, what this should say is 144, 34 times 34, I don't know what that is, maybe 1,400. 56 times 56 is somewhere around 3,000. -7 times -7 should be, all right, 49. And 128 by 128, I don't know, 12 or 13,000 or something like that. Then we're going to add them up and divide by 5. So there's 144, 1156, 3136, 49, etc. When we add those up, and the big one is the 16,384, and we divide by 5, we get this. So my goofing this up aside, does what's going on here make sense to everyone. When you look at that particular code, this is number 3. When you look at that, are there any lines in there that do not make sense to anyone? This is your time to ask. All right. Then I'm going to keep clearing and just keep going. What I've decided to do today is to go through this. If there's time left, all right, if there's time left, what I'm going to do is give you a brief, very gentle introduction to Node. But before I do that, I want to talk about what we're going to be doing next week. All right, what we're going to be doing next week with MySQL. All right, so we'll come back and talk about that in just a bit. So we've got the first 3 done. So I'm going to jump back in here again. And now number 4, create a new array using the map function where each element is equal to the original element plus 4. So in other words, I'll just create a very simple array that's got in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And what we will do in there then is we will take that and we can either create a new array or we can just do a console log to see what would happen. So 1 will be 5, 2 will be 6, etc. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I guess it is. All right. And hopefully, again, that makes sense. And hopefully I don't screw it up. All right, so we come in here, and again, I'm just going to create a new array. And just so you know, I've been doing this. So this would be array 4 equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those spaces and like that doesn't matter. But I can make this a const. And one thing that most people don't understand is when you use const with an array, unlike, you know this, that if I say const age equal 21, something like that, if I do that, then later on in my program, I try to say change the value of age, I get an error. That said, this is not a simple data type. This is a collection. It is legal. It is legal if you've got a const for an array to change the values of the array in the program. You can't change the size of the array, all right? But you can change the elements that are inside of the array, all right? Okay, so we've got that array in there, and let's just say console.log, all right? And we're going to say the name of the array, arr4.map, and we want it to come in here, and we want it to take each number that's in here, so we'll call it num, all right? And each one, we want it to be equal to num plus 4, all right? And again, hopefully that makes sense. What that should log out is 1 plus 4, then 2 plus 4, then 3 plus 4, then 4 plus 4, then 5 plus 4. All right, if we did it correctly. And as far as I know, we did. So let's hit enter. So you can see how it changed. All right. The examples that I'm giving you are contrived and they're very simplistic. But hopefully what you start to see is if you've got a whole bunch of records, for example, in a database, and you need to change something in code, you can grab the database data, bring it into your code, change it, and write it back out to the database. Let me give you a real world example. All right. What we do here, if I want to go and ask for vacation or check my vacation time, or check benefits, etc., I've got to go out to a certain website. All right. They are changing that website. They are moving it over to another website for whatever reason. All right. And this would be a way you could use a program like this and you could map through every employee and make any kind of changes that you have to make. These are just simple one-line changes. But that said, with this arrow function is, I could hit enter right there and we could have a whole nother function or something else in there. The reason I'm bringing that up to you is that's what we're going to be doing. All right. We're going to be using this arrow-like structure all the time. So I decided to give you this example, be it good, bad, or indifferent, but I decided to give it to you so that when you start to see it in the construct of using Node and Express and the like, that you be, oh, okay, that's kind of what he means. All right. So I guess you will be the ones who will decide whether or not going through this kind of stuff was a good thing or a waste of time. All right. So let's create another array. So again, I'll say const, this will be array 5, because this is question 5. And I'm going to set that equal to the numbers between 1 and 10. And what we are supposed to be doing in here, all right, in this particular example, is the first thing we're supposed to be doing is we are supposed to be finding out all of the even numbers that are in here, every number that's even. All right. So again, how would you do this typically? I don't know about you, but I'd write a for loop. And for each for loop element, I would go through there and say if that particular element modulo 2 equals 0, all right, I'd know then it's an even number. So I could put it into another array, or I could print it out, or I could do whatever. Well, we're going to do a similar type of thing. All right. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to come in here and we're going to say the name of our array, which is array5.filter. And what we put in here, this is the number. So this is each individual number. And what I want to do is I want to say if the number modulo 2 equal 0. Whoops, 0. That's very similar to what I just mentioned to you. All right. So that's going to filter out. And when we get done with that, what's going to be left in array 5 after we filter that out should be 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. All right. Now, I'm going to jump back for just a second because that's only part of the problem. Whoops. And I want to show you the entire problem. So let me change my share. All right. And again, this is number 5. So from an array of numbers, choose the even numbers. All right. And compute the sum. So I want to double them and then compute the sum using the array filter, map, and reduce methods. All right. And you might say, fine, why are you doing all this stuff? Because I want to show you here that you can go through what's referred to as chaining. All right. And the chaining that you do is very, very similar to the chaining you do in a language like jQuery. All right, so I'm going to come down to the next line. You don't have to line them up, but I will. So I ran the filter on here. All right, then I'm going to run the map on what's left. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to just call these even numbers. I'll just call it even because they're the even numbers. All right, and I want to take those and I want to double them. All right, so I'm going to say even times 2. All right, so that should double them. All right, then finally, all right, with what's left, I want to add all of those up. All right, so I want to say reduce. Again, I've got that AC, whoops, I need 2 parens, ACC, and what my current value is, and I want to go and add those. So I'm going to run through this and show you what should happen if I did this right. Now I'm about to hit enter. If I did this right, this line right here should pluck out 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. This line right here should take those values and change them from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 to 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. What this line here then should do is it should take that 4, 8, 12, 6, whatever it was, and add them up. All right. So I'm hoping what I just said to you made some sense. All right. Now, it gives me the final byproduct. So if I double that or multiply it by 2, that's 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. Plus 12 is 24. Plus 16 is 40. Plus 20 is 60. At any time during this process, I could have stopped. And rather than doing this as one line of code, which basically is done as one operation, I could have done it as 3 different operations. So if I'd have done the array filter right there, if I'd have hit enter, what it would have shown then would have been 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. But then down here, I would have had to say ARR5.map, and then it would have changed those. What I'm trying to show you in this example is it is fairly easy to chain these. And when you chain these, it works out almost in the same way that it works out when you chain in jQuery. In that, I run this. I get some output from that. The output from that becomes the input into this. I run that. The output of that becomes the input into here. And that's what I'm trying to get across to you. All right. There's sort of a schism or call it what you want, but typically, all right, typically when and Clayton, I believe you're probably the exception. No, so is John. You guys had Evan, I believe, both of you for the AWD1000 class. I don't know if Evan had the time to go in and start to talk to you about arrow functions, and if you started to look at some of these ES6 functions or not. I know that by and large, when I have taught the course, it's hard enough just to get through everything we want to get through. And this is usually something that we might spend a little time on if there's time in the last couple days of class. All right. So every class is going to be different. All right. So that was number 5. Let me do another one or two, and then we'll take a break. So I'm going to clear my console. Right, and I'm going to jump back in again and take a look at what was in the next one. So this is number 6. Create a new array where each element is the uppercase, all right, of what was in the original array. Now, I'm not going to use numbers here. That would be kind of silly to do that because uppercasing a number doesn't make any sense. So I'll create an array and I'll put 3 or 4 strings in there. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to run the toUpperCase function on there, and then they should all be uppercased. All right. In fact, yeah, we'll just do that. So all right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create array 6, ARR6, and I'm going to set that equal to, again, just 3 strings. I'll tell you what, let's set it to 4 strings. We'll make it Jeff. Yeah, we'll make it all lowercase. Jeff, Michael, Clayton, and John. All right. So we've now got that array. I'm going to go down to the next line, and I could, just so you all know, I could, if I wanted to, I could right there hit enter. But then it's just every time you do that, it comes back. Since this would work because that's an executable line of code, but it would come back and it would say undefined. So every other line would start coming back saying undefined, and it's very hard for you to read. How do I know that? Because that's how I did it the first time during my practice exercise. So I'm going to console.log here. And I'm going to tell it that for array 6, arr6.map, what I want it to do is I want it to run through each string. I'll just call it S for string. And for each one of these strings, I want it to be string.to uppercase, like that. All right, that's fairly simplistic. And if I hit enter, well, invalid or unexpected token. We'll fix it right now. Oh, I need one more curly brace or one more parenthesis there. Notice again, there's 1 paren, 2 paren, 3 paren, and I only have 2 ending parentheses. So, oh, give me a break, would you please? Console.log here, 6 map, 6. And that's why I purposely run these, because I did and it worked. So string.to uppercase.
Looks like in John, 1 is single quote, and then there's a double
You
quote.
are correct, sir. Thank you. And I always appreciate when somebody else can go and find my errors, because I make tons. So there you see what happened. All right. It made them all uppercase. Thank you, Michael. All right. Again, I'm running a lot of the same kind of thing in here, not to waste my time, not to waste your time, but sometimes repetition is the best way to learn this stuff. That's all I can tell you. All right. Number 7, we'll go through this one. All right. In just a second, we're going to do that. That is the longest one that was in here. Probably the most pain in the butt for all of it. It's not that we have to write a lot, but we're going to convert one thing into another thing. So we'll finish this. It'll be around 1 o'clock, so we'll take a break. The idea behind this particular one is what we want to do here is we want to go and we want to convert this into this. So for lack of better words, we want to replace the word name, all right, with an ID. And we want those IDs to come in there and we want them to be incrementing. All right, so that's the idea. So I'm going to grab this right there so I don't have to type that in. All right, so I'm going to copy that as we begin. All right, and then I'm going to jump back into my listing here. All right, I'm going to paste that in. Okay. Well, that's interesting. It did go down to a new line by itself, but it's not saying undefined. So I'm hoping that's all okay. So with that done, I'm going to say here, oh, and I called it heroes, but that's fine. I'm going to say const ARR. This is number 7. So ARR7 equal these heroes that we just did, dot map. All right. And we want to take each hero and we want to work with its index. Right. And we want to do a console. No, I'm sorry. We want to do a return. All right. And what we want to return here is ID index and the hero, but not the hero. We want the hero dot name. All right. And finally, we want to put in here a curly brace and that. So ideally, if I did this right, all right, and I'm already proving how hard it can be for me to do things right, all right, but it'll replace the word name on all of these, all right, with the word ID followed by index, which is going to be the number starting at 0 for each one of these. All right, it came back undefined. So let's see. I know what the problem is. It's not being called. So let me figure that out. Let's take a break. Come back, please, at 1:05, and I'll have that working. I'll see you then. All right. There it is. Okay. I'll be back. I'm just going to get new water. I'll be back in a couple minutes. All right, I am back. I hope you are. Everything I did right before was correct. I just didn't console it out. So that's all I had to do is do the console log. So it did change the word name for each one of these. It changed it to the word ID, and then that index property that we added right there, that put the number in there. All right. All right. So let me clear the console and go on. And jump back in here. And the next one was number 8. Again, pretty simplistic. Create an array like this, input words, okay? In fact, I can put all this hopefully under one line. Or maybe not. But grab this, create an array, all right, that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements in it. You can see with those elements, the word spray has 6 characters or letters in it. Limit has 5. Elite has 5. Exuberant, destruction, and present all have more than 6. So it should go through here and iterate its way through this array, and it should just give us that in the new array. All right, if we did it right. So let me grab that line right here. And we'll come back into here. Right. Now I could have just called that AR8 or whatever, but we're just going to continue on. So that's my array. All right. And what am I saying that I want to do with that? All right. I can just come in here and create a new array. So we'll make that one const ARR8. And we're going to set that equal to, all right, the name of the first array, which was input words, dot filter. And I'm going to say for each word that's in there, I'll just call it W. All right. I want you to only return where the W dot length is greater than 6. All right. So that should create the new array for us. And then when we come back, I'm going to just do a console.log of that new array, which is ARR8. And as you can see, all that's in there are the 3 words that are greater than 6. All right. And just so you know, I mean, where I found a lot of these examples, I actually made them a little harder than they were. So many of the things that were in here were written and they were set up to be just very simplistic. All right. So that was number 8. Jumping back in then. The next one, number 9. All right. Start with an array that contains the numbers 1 through 10. Then use filter, use map, and use reduce to produce the following. Okay, again, it's very similar to what we looked at earlier. An array now with only the odd numbers. So again, this time, what we will do is we will modulo it by 2 and check for a result of 1. All right, and that'll be the first one that comes up. All right, and then we will take that. So in other words, if we go from 1 to 10, that should come back with 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. All right. From that, then, I think that we're going to go and basically pipe that or put that into, all right, where, well, we could do it as one line and just keep filtering it, but let's just do it as several ones. So that should give us 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Then let's go through those and find only the numbers divisible by 2 or divisible by 5. Well, you already know it'd be the even numbers plus the number 5. All right. And then finally find only those numbers that are divisible by 3. All right, so there again, it's going to be modulo 3 equals 0, and then square, it should have been squared, not squared. Square those numbers. All right. All right. So starting with this then, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the array. So const ARR9 equals, and we wanted the numbers from 1 to 10. All right. So we've got our array. And the first thing that, or the next thing that we want to do in here is we want to ferret out or just get our odd numbers. So I'm going to say here, I'll make another constant. I'll say const odd numbers equals, and I want to take the array. So ARR9 dot filter. All right. And what am I filtering? Well, I'm telling it here to take each number that's in there, and I want the number, I want to be able to modulo it by 3. Oh, by 2, and have it be equal to 1. Again, there's nothing new there. You've seen that kind of stuff before. All right. So what I should be doing here, if this works, when I get done and I come out here and I do a console.log on odd numbers, should have called it numbers, but it's number, that's fine. If this is correct, it should come back with 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And you can see it does. Okay, that's good. That's a start. All right. Then the next thing that we were asked to do was to take these and instead of making it, put a more complex condition on it. All right. So what I want to do is I don't need this anymore because I've already got that array. All right. But I want to say here, if the number is divisible, so I want all even numbers. So I want this. All right. Then I can put in there that, and I can add another condition. So I can say the number modulo 5 is equal to 0. All right. I don't know if it'll help to line those up or not, but just so you see that. All right. So now what I'm doing is I've already got a thing called odd number. So let's say const odd number, because these are really even numbers. So I'll call this even numbers plus. And again, if I did it correctly, it should have in there 2, 4, 6, 8 plus the number 5. So this has got to change to even numbers plus. All right, and it says I'm missing a paren, which is totally possible. It says missing paren after argument list. All right, so let's take a quick look. Oh, no, it's not as I'm missing a paren. It's right here. Let me bring this back up again. I didn't do my or, so I got to say that or that. Should work now. Let's see. All right, so I get 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 plus the number 5. So again, this was designed to show you that you can have multiple conditions. All right, so what was left? All right, we want an array of the numbers divisible by 3, and then we want those numbers squared. All right. So let's go in and do that. So I will say const nums div by 3 squared. That's a crummy name, but you get the idea. All right, and I'm going to do a very similar thing to what I just did. In other words, let me just put this on a new line. I'm going to say take this array, ARR9, and start by filtering it. All right, and I want to grab for each number, I want you to give me only the numbers where when I modulo it by 3, it's equal to 0. You already know this. All right, nothing surprising here. That should return 3, 6, and 9. All right, then I want to take the 3, the 6, and the 9, and I want to square each one of them. All right, so you don't have to line these up, but oftentimes people do. You know, they come over here, but I'll just leave it right here, and I'll say dot. So now I want to map, and I want to take each one of those numbers that I just had, I think I called them num, and I want to run that through another time, and I want to say num times num. So what should happen here, again, is this should pluck out 3, 6, and 9. This should take 3 and multiply it by 3. So it should change that to 9. 6 by 6 times 6 is 36. And 9 times 9 is 81. So if I did my math right, it should be 9, 36, and 81. And I get undefined. Why? Because I didn't do my console.log on it. And again, that was called num div by 3 squared. And there it is, 936 and 81. Now, again, I've said this to you before. I'm just going to say it one more time. This is not meant for you to go, oh, wow, what, how fantastic. But I'm trying to run through some fairly elementary exercises that are using most of the built-in brand new ES5 and ES6 array method or array methods. All right. Oh, didn't like that. Try that again. Here we go. All right. Next, number 10. So this is number 10 of about 17 or so. All right. So let's take a look at that one. All right. Consider the following array. Use filter, then map to filter the even numbers and square them. Assign the results to that. So I'll just use what is in here just to double check and make sure that we get these results. All right. So the sum of the array elements right here, the sum of these should be 468. When we take the even numbers that are in here, so 22, 46, 86, and 98, we get those. All right. So we could just as easily have calculated the sum of the squared even nums array, and that would have been some big number over probably around 20,000 or so. All right. So let's grab that. And again, one thing I do want you to understand and keep aware of as I jump back into here and show you this. This is something we've discussed before, but one of the things for you to be cognizant of is in this example, we've got a let. All right. By now, you should understand the difference between using let and using var. If for some reason you don't, I mean, I can be kind of a smart aleck here and just tell you, don't ever use var. All right, var is pre-JavaScript 2015. And var has almost, in most cases, it has document or window scope. So if you are if you declare a function using var, you can, if you know what you're doing, or if you don't, even if you declare it inside of a function, you can use it outside of that function. That is never recommended. On the other hand, if you declare a variable using let, it has block scope, which means that by default, that when you declare a variable and you declare it using let, its whole scope is within the curly braces in which it's defined. All right. And the other thing we've talked about here too, what you're going to notice when we start writing server-side JavaScript is it's probably going to be very infrequent that you even use let. You'll use const almost always. All right. Okay. So with that said, we just continue on and do this one. All right. So let call it squared evens equal, all right, the array nums dot filter. And for each number, and again, I may have mentioned this before, I may not have, I don't know. But what a lot of developers end up doing is they pluralize their array name. So when they're in here and they're working with it, they can use the singular version. Nums, num, etc. You don't have to ever do that, but it's a very fairly common practice. All right, so we want the even numbers, so num modulo 2 equal, we can put one more equal in there, 0. All right, and then we will take the results of that and we will run the map function on it. So dot map, and for each number, we again want to multiply the number by itself. All right, very similar to what you just saw. And then finally, we want to do a console.log of the array, which is squared evens. All right, and I guess there was one more thing that we were asked to do in there, and that is we were asked to sum all those elements. So let sum equals those numbers dot reduce. You've already seen this a couple times. So I'm going to use an accumulator. Again, you could call that whatever you want. ACC for accumulator is a common name. You can call this anything you want. All right. CUR means the current element. So that's commonly, that is what's used. All right. And we are going to tell it that what we want it to do is to run through and add up each element. So to my accumulator, add the current value. And when you do this, start at 0. So initialize what we're working with, initialize it to 0. All right. And finally, we will come in here and we will do a console.log of sum. And I realized already I made a mistake. What mistake? I wasn't supposed to be reducing that one. I was supposed to be reducing. No, that is right. I'm sorry. So if I did this right and hit enter, all right, well, it still has the undefined. That's nothing. The 484, that it did go through and it found all of the ones, my even ones, and it 22 times 22 is 484, 46 times 46 is 2116, etc. Then we went back to the original array and we counted all of the elements. All right. So again, if I were to come back and let me just get this whole thing back up here. Oops. And I'm going to remove all of this stuff. And I'm going to let sum2, we'll say. So rather than using nums, I'm going to use the other array, which was squared evens. Okay. And that's going to be, like I said, some number that's going to be around 20,000. So 19,600. All right. All right. Just a few more of these as we finish our way up with these. Okay. That was number 10. So I'm going to continue on then with number 11, which was kind of a long one. All right. So let me clear these. Now, I may have even mentioned this before, but I want to say it again. There's at least one of you. I'm not going to say who. I'm not even going to say if it's one of you three or one of the six in the class, but there's at least one person who has emailed me and said, I'm really struggling. I had a big problem in AWD1111. All right. I didn't get it in AWD1111. I had nothing but problems once we got into JavaScript. All right. And I think I understood some stuff, but I think when we got into stuff that was more complex, I didn't understand it. That's why I made the decision to go through and do this like this, the way I'm doing it. All right. So again, as of tomorrow, which will be a lab day, but I will be going over a couple programs that I've done. But after tomorrow, we're done with the JavaScript review. When I did this review last year, all right, we spent 2 weeks on it, but we rather than going through a lot of the ES5 and ES6 stuff like I'm doing with you, we literally just went back and went through a big review of HTML, then a big review of CSS. All right. And a lot of people wrote down on their evals. I didn't think that was necessary. So I'm trying to, kind of do what let the class dictate rather what happens next. All right. Enough of that. So let's jump back over to here. And look at number 11. All right. It says, imagine the following arrays. So we've got the numbers from 10 to 14. It says, use an old-fashioned for loop to sum all those array elements. You know what? I'm not even going to write that in here, but we'd say something like for let I equals 0, I, we won't use I because I don't want it to be capitalized, so we'll use J. So let J equals 0, J is less than numbers dot length plus J. And to sum all those elements, we would probably come up here and have something called total or something like that. Let total equals 0. And then we'd come in here and just say, it's interesting. All right. So we come in here and say something like total plus equal numbers sub J. All right. And I think you all get that well enough that we don't have to do that. All right. Again, we can do that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. All right. And it's going to come back if we put it into a console log, it'll come back and we say the sum of all array elements is, and it'll give us that, whatever 10 plus 11 plus 12 plus 13 plus 14 is. Okay. That's fine. But let's write it. Let's go through this stuff more. Sorry, the new fangled way of doing it. So that's part A. Let's do B, C, and D. And the same thing with the next one, because I said use an old-fashioned for loop. All right. So we'll look at that, but then we will actually do it in here to do the old-fashioned way. So I'm going to do B, C, and D next in here for number 11. All right. So I do have to set up an array. So let array 11 equal, and I don't remember what those numbers were, but I think there were something like 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Maybe I'm missing one or adding one. I don't know. Doesn't matter. All right. So we've got those numbers. All right. So I'm going to say um, let total equal numbers dot reduce. And you've seen this now several times. ACCCUR. Right? return ACC plus CUR. All right, so we're going to return that. And again, we need the curly here, and we need this to start at 0. All right, and if we do that, and I say, whoops, well, it's weird, but if I say console.log, the sum of array elements is, okay, plus and I want to put the sum in there. All right. Backward, yeah, we can do that. All right. Now, I've got this, and I can put in here total. You know this. You've done this kind of thing before. Guess what? I want us to get totally out of the mindset of doing this, ever, and get into using template literals. Like that. And there are several advantages of using template literals. I may have even mentioned this yesterday. I don't remember. But you can split template literals over multiple lines. All right. And, so I could literally write a bunch of HTML or whatever I needed to write in there. I could do that without any kind of problem. All right. So let's see. Now, if this is right, if I did it right and didn't make any mistakes, 11 plus 12 is 23, and 13 is 36, and 14 is 50, and 15 is 65. So again, what are we doing here? We are telling it in this code that we've got right here, we are telling it this plus this plus this plus this plus this. So the accumulator starts at 0. All right, then we add 11 to it, so the accumulator has 11. Then we add 12 to it, so the accumulator has 23, etc. So ACC is the accumulator, and CUR, all right, CUR is the current element. So did I make any mistakes? Of course I did. All right, I don't know why I put a parenthesis there, but I did, so that's fine, we'll fix it. I no longer need this array because I've already defined it. All right. That is just backwards. That's the problem. Okay. So if I hit enter, oh my gosh, I got to learn to type. I put numbers, if you saw that, not numbers. So let's look through it for any other errors that might be in here. Numbers. Dot reduce, and it was numbers, correct? So let total equals no. That should be ARR11 dot reduce. All right, so now let's see if there's any errors in here. Okay. Oh, it still has that thing. Oh boy, oh boy. All right, so we've got this. I think now it's correct. Of course not. AR11 is not defined. I can find it up there, so I'll put it back in there again. All right, just to make it simpler so I don't have to type it in again where I'll probably make a mistake. Let me go over to my own key here because you've already seen it. So where is it? Here we go. I'll have to clean it up a little, but okay. So that's not numbers. That should be ARR11.reduce. Now, if I do a console.log, which I left that out, .log, all right, and say the sum is, and that was total. Hopefully, I didn't screw that up, and hopefully it's 65. All right. Okay. And there's a thing in here for the maximum and the minimum value. Let's quickly run through those. And when I say quickly, I mean that. All right. So I'm supposed to find the largest value in here and the smallest value in here. Well, you can see this already. All right. You can see what the largest and smallest are. But so let's make a new array. So let's clear our console. And let's let array 11, we'll call it 11B. And I'm just going to put 5 random numbers in here: 34, 56, 11, -4, and 121. Yeah, all right. Now you can all look at these, and you all know what is the biggest number in there and what is the smallest number in there. I get that. You all know that. But let's let the computer figure it out. So we'll just call it min. Doesn't matter what we call it, so I'm just going to call it min equal the name of our array, ARR11B dot reduce. And again, we are going to have an accumulator and a current, but they're going to be used in kind of a little bit different way here. All right. Now we're going to come in here and we're going to use an if statement to say if the accumulator, all right, if it's greater than or equal to, I'm sorry, we're doing less than or equal to, all right, so if it's less than or equal to our current value, okay, then what we want to do is we want to return the accumulator. Okay, and if that's not the case, else we want to return the current value. Okay. All right. Now, when we do that, that's not sufficient as it is. Okay. I've got to come down here. And this is the reason I put this example in here, because I do have to come back here and say, okay, but make sure that that accumulator starts there. All right. Now, technically, that's going to give me the number 0. All right. So I'll just put in here a bigger number. I'll put in like, I don't know, 100. And the reason I'm telling you that, the reason I'm showing you that is if I put in 0 there, it's going to assume that this is 0 to begin with. In fact, I can do that because I have a negative number. So 0 will work just fine. Right? So when I get done with this, I should be able to come in then and say console.log minimum array value min. All right. Anybody sees any errors in there, please let me know. ARR11B, ARR11B, ACC, and CUR. It looks correct. Of course, it wasn't. CUR is not defined because I put 2 R's right there. Doggone it, Jeffrey. So, just 1. -4. Pretty much what you'd expect to have happen, right? And now all I have to do to change this, okay, I don't need to redeclare the array again, but if I want to make this max, all right, now I just have to say greater than or equal to. And again, I can keep it at 0, and now I can say let max equal. So now I can say the maximum value equal max. And it should go through there from the array that we had And hopefully if I did it right, it'll come back with 121. And there you go. All right. And again, I know I said this to you before. I'm just saying it again. This is not really a gee whiz type of thing here. All right. All right. The next one is number 12. And it says use that old-fashioned for loop to take that and create a new array. We could do that. All right. In fact, just to show you, because I have done it already. All right. But if we wanted to do that, one way that we could do this, we could take this array that we've got right here, and I could come in here and write myself the old-fashioned for loop. All right. So I can come in here and create a new array. I could say let's just call it doubled. All right. And that's going to be equal to an empty array. So there's nothing in there. So then I could loop through here. All right. I could loop through here and say for let j equals 0, j less than numbers dot length plus plus j. Right? And then I could come in here and say numbers, or what do we call it? Doubled dot push numbers sub I times 2. That's all I'd have to do. So what that would do right there is it would create a brand new array called doubled. And instead of having it hold 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it would hold 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. All right. So again, if we printed it out, we'd get this. And that's fine. The reason I'm taking a second to tell you this is, again, this is one of those things you've got to understand push. You've got to understand pop. Push adds a new number to the end of the array. Pop removes the last number in the array. And then there's shift and unshift. Shift adds, I believe, because sometimes I mix them up, but I believe shift adds the new number to the beginning of the array, and unshift removes the first number in the array. Those are some of the built-in array methods that you just need to be comfortable with. All right. So I want to create this again. In fact, let me just grab all of it. Let's see if it worked. All right. So I want to, where it says output should be, I'll come in here. I'm going to remove this line. And I'm going to come in here with a console.log. I have to fix that C. And I'll have to print out doubled. And we'll see whether or not this worked. All right. Again, knowing me, I could very well have an error in here. I didn't try to. I hope I don't. All right. Didn't seem to like that. So I is not defined. Oh, that should have been numbers J. Well, that's why. All right. That's okay. All right. So that'll have to be numbers sub J. Are there any other errors in here? Numbers doubled. J numbers length. I don't see any. There could be, but I don't see any. So you can see what happened. All right. It did double them. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. No biggie right there. But what we want to do is we want to reproduce that, and we want to reproduce that. All right. And we want to reproduce it using the map function. All right. This wasn't that hard. There isn't that much code in here. All right. But I'm going to come in here and say, let new doubled. All right. That's going to be our array. So let that equal our array numbers dot map. All right. And what do I want to do in here? Well, what I want to do in here is I want to be able to use number. All right. And I want it to return the number times 2. Okay. And enter in my curly brace and this. And then come in, oops, sorry. Come in and do a console.log of new doubled. All right. Missing a parenthesis. Okay. 1, 2. All right, where's my other one go? Oh, I should have had one there by the word number. So let's just put that in and then run it again. That's the parameter. So enter. And there you got the same thing. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, doing it that way. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, doing it that way. All right. So again, I know in many ways here, I'm probably preaching to the choir with what I'm about to say, but why am I taking the time to do this? The answer is what you're going to find is by and large, programmers do whatever they can to save some lines of code. In that example I just showed you, I probably took 6 lines and made it 4. That may not sound like a lot, but if you keep going and going and going and going, and you keep saving lines of code, sooner or later, I mean, it does, in the end, it starts to add up. All right. Okay, of course, all of my papers dropped, so let me go through here and grab the one I want so we can finish this thing up. Can't find it right now, so we're going to take a break, and please let's come back. We will come back at 2 o'clock. All right, so let's take a break till then, and we'll finish up these last 4 or 5 problems. All right, it's 2 o'clock. I'm going to finish this up. There's about 4 or 5 more to go here. All right, it says here, assume the following simple array of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, produce the sum using a for loop. You already know that. We've done it already, but you can also use a for each loop. Right? Now, is that going to buy you a lot? Really, in this particular situation, not a whole heck of a lot. But let's just look at both of them. I'm just going to write them both right here. So again, you've already seen this, but I'm going to say it again anyway. So you've got that array called numbers. So for, let's let sum equals 0. All right, then for and we will let j equals 0, j less than numbers dot length plus j, and sum plus equals numbers sub j. So if we did this, all right, and then when we got done, did a console.log, and we said something like the sum of array elements is, and we put in there sum. You've seen these before, okay? So that should add up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which I think gives us 15. All right, so it should say the sum of array elements is 15. Let's look at how you would do that with a for each loop then. All right, and with that, we can again say, let's just call it sum2. So let sum2 equals 0. All right, I don't need, I'm trying to start to get away from using any semicolons except like in loops and whatever. So, all right, so then we can say for let number, in fact, we don't even have to do that. Let me try that again. We say numbers dot for each, and then we want our current elements, so we can call it whatever we want. I'll just call it L for element. All right. And what we want to do, now I want to show you something. This is the first time I've shown you this, but there is a shortcut in here. If I've only got one line of code that I'm putting inside of here like this, sum plus equals number, like that, and then come through here and do this, that's totally legit. That should work. All right. In fact, I'm going to grab this one here. And I'm going to say the sum of the array elements is, and that's sum2. I want to see if I'm going to run both these and make sure that they work. So again, it should just have 5. All right. So let me create this in here, and then we'll come back and grab all this stuff. Let me just grab all of it right now, so I don't have to waste too much of your time. Grab that, come into here, put in that. All right. If I've done this right, they should both say the sum of array elements is 15. All right, if I've done it correctly. So we're going to find out right now. And there was my for loop. Yeah, that can move over. I think that's everything. And over to, okay. Let's check and see if indeed they work. The sum of the array elements is 15. Okay, That's what the standard, kind of doing it the standard way. So nothing new there. So let's grab the other one and put that in there. And it should give me the same output unless I mistyped anything. Of course I did. So let's look at what was mistyped after argument list. And the problem is I need right here, I should have put in a parenthesis. So let me just bring that back up again. And right here, I needed a paren. All right, enter. Come on, Jeffrey. All right, let the numbers equal this. Let's sum. Oh, that should have been sum 2. All right, let me try that again. So console.clear. Go back and grab this stuff. Number is not defined. Okay. All right. L. Okay, the sum of the array elements is 0. Well, that doesn't look right, does it? So let's see. Oh, that's got to be sum 2 here. So let's do it one last time. And then we will go over it and get the heck off of this problem. All right, so sum 2, that should be sum 2. Since I'm using L here, that has to be L. So what are we telling it to do here? We're creating a new variable called sum 2. We're telling it to go through and for each element, add that element to our sum and then print that out. The sum of the array elements is 15. So even though I didn't show you it well, all right, let me grab this. And let me go back to our document. Put that in there. Okay. Because what I do want you to see from this, what I do want you to see is both of these in action, so to speak, so you can see them side by side. And again, you are still going to find a lot of old school programmers who do things one way and newer school programmers that do things another way. These both work exactly the same. You get the same results with each one. All right. You can make a case saying that there's no condition here. All right. We don't have to do a condition like we're doing here. We also don't have to do the incrementing. It's done for us automatically. So most people, I believe at least, would tell you that that way is an easier way of doing things. All right. Okay. You may or may not have noticed, but I said Q13 here. And then for the next one, I said Q13. So that was wrong. That should have been Q14. And of course, that would make that one 15. Okay, let's look here. Write a function using REST parameters and let the user pass in a numeric array of any size and return the sum. From what I've shown you thus far, all right, from what I've shown you thus far, this is one of the most important things that you have to start understanding. All right, with using, like I said, with using REST parameters in the spread operator. So let me clear. All right. So we can do something like this. Function sum dot args. All right. Now, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think I am, that this used to be referred to as a variadic parameter, which means that the number of things that you pass in can vary. All right. I think now it's just not even referred like that anymore. I don't really hear that kind of verbiage anymore. So we want to come in here and again, int, oops, not int, let sum, I'll just say the sum equals 0. Okay. For let number of args, this looks very English-like, the sum plus equals number. All right. End your for loop and in this. Now, I'm going to call it in just a second, but what I want you to understand about that is this. I'm going to call this twice. In fact, I'll call it 3 times. And the first time I'll pass in 2 parameters, then I'll pass in 3 parameters, then I'll pass in 4 parameters. And the reason for doing that is to show you that this says I'll accept any number of parameters that you have. And as long as there are parameters, keep adding them to my sum. All right. So again, if I, whoops, I didn't want to hit enter there. Doggone you, Jeff. All right. So I want to come in here and I want to call it first time. So console.log, and I want to call sum, and we'll just pass it in with 10 and 20. All right. Then we'll call it again. And we'll call sum again with 10, 20, and 30. Then we will call it one last time. And we will call again sum with 10 and 20 and 30 and 40. Hit enter. Oh my gosh, because I already did sum. Okay, I already had done sum earlier. We'll fix it, no problem. All right. Call this calc sum. All right. And again, we'll call it console.log. Now we will call calc sum. We'll pass it in 1, 2, 3. We'll call it again. We'll pass it in 10, 20, 30, 40. Just leave it like that. All right. Now it's giving us undefined. Why would it be giving us undefined? When I'm going through this, if I screw up and you see something, please say something. All right. All right. So let's see. Now let's just go through it first. Okay. And that is this. The name of this is calc sum. It's taking a variable number of arguments. All right. The sum is going to be the total. That's what we want to print out. All right. Or that's what we want to be calculating, and that's in here. So it's doing this for a variable number of arguments. That's the ... All right. That's the spread operator, basically. And then we want to say console.log, and we want to call the name of the function, which was calc sum. And we want to pass in that, and then that, and then that. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with this. So if you see something, tell me, because I want to know too. Args. No. No. Okay. This is it. All right, so we've got that, but what we have to do is after we finish that, okay, we have to return sum. Then we can end. So now let's try calling it again. So console.log call. It's probably going to give us an error because we've got that sum right there and we'd already used that. So let's just call this S. All right. And this will be tote. This will be tote. This will be tote. All right. So we're going to call S and we're going to pass it in 10 and 20. And we're going to call it again and call S and pass it in 10 and 20 and 30. And call it one last time and pass in 10 and 20 and 30 and 40. Now let's look at the whole thing and see if I missed anything. This is our function. All right. So what we're doing in here is we are coming up with a total. All right. But we have to return that total because the system has to know that's what's going to be logged out from this. What we had previously, we weren't returning anything. And that's why it came back with undefined. All right. So 10 plus 20 is 30, 10 plus 20 plus 30 is 60, 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40 is 100. All right, good enough. Let's just do these last three and get in and move on. Merge two different arrays using the spread operator. Now, there are actually two different ways that you, at least, that you can merge arrays. One is through the use of the spread operator. I'm going to show you that right now. But there's also, I believe it's a concat operator, either concat or join. One of those you can use as well. All right, or both. So that, again, as always, there's more than one way of doing the same thing. So let's do this one. So we'll have these two arrays right here. All right, it's not hard. I'll just copy that over. All right, so let me clear the console. And I will let's go, this is number 15. So let's just say A15 equal, and we'll set up an array with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in it. We'll make A16, and we will put in that 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, and it's literally only 1 or 2 lines that we have to put in. So let new array equal our first array. We have to put these inside a paren. So dot, 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 A15, comma, dot, 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 A16. And then finally, to see if this worked or not, we will console.log new array. This parameter must be the last parameter. Okay. I think what that is I put those in parens, and I believe that they should be in brackets here. There you go. So we have just concatenated two arrays. Now, you should already be aware of this, and I think you already know this. We could have run map or reduce or filter on one or on both of those arrays to pare down what we wanted, and then we could have combined them. And just to talk about why you might want to do something like this. Maybe A15 and A16 were two different lists of employees. All right. So maybe from two branches of the same company or whatever. Doesn't really matter. But maybe we were looking for something common between the two. So maybe we wanted everybody who worked in a certain department. So we could go through and filter that out in each one and then combine them together into a new array, as we did right here. All right. Just two more to go. And I will tell you with the next one, we don't even have to go back because I'm just going to write it for you. It's only 2 or 3 lines of code and I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to let str equals JavaScript. Now, nothing big there, but what is kind of interesting is this. Let ARR, let's just call it ARRX, equals, so set that equal to .str. All right, and then finally, let's console log ARRX. All right. So what we just did right there, all right, what we just did right there is we took, technically, this is a string array. Technically, that's what it is. Technically, what an array is it's a string of characters. But we broke it up into a true. All right. It now really is an array of characters. Okay. All right. And for the last one, not very hard. I just run it for you and show it to you. All right. And I'm going to create an array. I'm just going to put, so let TA for the array equals, and I'm going to put 6 numbers in here. 55, 66, 126, negative 456, 88, and 12. So there's my array that's called TA. All right. Now I'm going to come in here and let max equal math.max dot TA. All right, I wish I wouldn't have hit enter, but I did. Let's see. That's okay. Let min equal math.min TA. All right, and then I'm just going to console log both of these. Console.log max, we'll do min equal min and max equal max. Right? That should be pretty obvious taking a look at that. The reason that has got some importance in there is it's in here and it's using the spread operator here, but it's using it with older JavaScript functions. Math.min and math.max have been around forever. All right. All right. So that's basically what I wanted to show you in there. Now, was that worth our time? I don't know, but I hope so. So let me close this. And I can close this too. All right. Now I'm going to have to change my share one last time because I want to show you this. Because I want us to start getting into something that this class is technically all about. So, all right. I'm going to go through part of this. It's 161 pages. I'm not that good that I can do that in an hour and a half and get a break in there too. But this is that NodeJS handbook. I've already done a bunch of lectures on this, but I'm going to jump all the way up to page 10. And I want to start talking about Node.js. All right. Now, I may have told you this before. I may not have. I don't know. But 9 years ago, a guy, I think his name is Roland Dahl, managed to grab the V8 engine that runs Chrome. So that's the software that runs Chrome. He managed to somehow get his hands on it, added some C++ code to it so that you could run JavaScript on the server. All right. And that's, in a nutshell, that's the history. You don't really have to know any more about that. But there are a couple things in here that are important. A Node.js app runs as a single process. But the key thing in here is it runs things asynchronously. So it's smart enough that if you write your code in the right way, and that's what my responsibility is to show you how to write that code in the right way, that if you give it an operation that's going to take a while, like reading from a database or a file system or something else, you can tell it to go on and go ahead and then come back, all right, when you get that information back. And what that does, as it says in here, is this allows Node.js to handle thousands of concurrent connections at a single time. So why is this important? Well, imagine that we're Amazon, as an example, and somebody comes in there to Amazon and they want to just look at some books. So they want to see what books are available on Node.js. And while they're doing that, somebody else comes in there and they want to buy a book via Node.js or something else. Well, what you want to be able to do is you want that server to be able to handle both requests, because if you're looking through all these books on Node.js, if you have to stop while the user is doing that, that wouldn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. All right. I may have given you this, I probably did, this parallel before, because you see this a lot when they talk about JavaScript and they talk about you going into a restaurant, and the fact that when you do that, if it's a restaurant, a classier restaurant, not an Arby's or a McDonald's or something, but you go in and you don't go up to the chef. You have an intermediary. You have what? You have the waitress or the waiter that comes up and takes your order for you. Well, imagine that you didn't have, you know, something like this where you were blocked. In other words, imagine that you ordered your food, the waiter took the order back by the cook or the chef and had to wait until the chef finished. That wouldn't be a very good way to run things. All right. But that's the same kind of thing here. We don't want that to happen here either. All right. Now, talks here about Node has a vast number of libraries. Before we do that, I would like all of you to please go do this. Now, I'm going to have to, in just a second, I'm going to have to change my share. All right, but it'll be okay in just a second. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out. You may or you may not. You may or you may not already have Node.js on your system. You probably do. But what I'm going to ask, because I want us to use the latest and greatest, is I want each and every one of you to go out to your control panel. All right. So in your Windows search box, in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you should be able to type in control panel and hit enter. After you type that in and you hit enter, it should show you your control panel. And it should be alphabetized. And there should be something in there that says programs and features. I want you to find programs and features and double click on it. And that'll give you a list of everything you've got loaded on your machine. Then either arrow down to the ends and find node.js if it's in there, or you can click in the search box that's in the upper right-hand corner and put node in there. But the chances are pretty good that if you did it with me, it was like a good year ago, so we got an older version of Node. So let's get rid of that and bring in the newest one. So if you do have Node.js in there, if you don't have it, just skip this. But if you do have it, right mouse click on it and choose uninstall. And mine beeped at me and said, are you sure you want to uninstall Node.js? And I click yes. So it's preparing right now. All right, it's asking me for permission. I gave it permission. And actually does normally take this long, and my internet's been kind of spotty all day though. But what'll happen is, and mine is just about finished, is Node should now be gone. All right, so when you look in that list of stuff, Node shouldn't be there anymore. Mine, it's gone. All right, so with that said, then what I want you to do is I want you to go out. Come on. I want you to go out, please, to nodejs.org. nodejs.org. If you get out here, you're right where you should be. All right, so if you've uninstalled Node, now we're going to install Node, and there are two versions here. What I'm going to recommend for this class is we use the one on the left. LTS means long-term support. It's the version that's been around for a while. All right, current might have some of the latest and greatest features, but it can occasionally be a little buggy. So I want you to click the button for 16.17.0 LTS, and it's going to save it if you're using Chrome like I am to your downloads folder, and I can see it there in my left-hand corner. I'm going to right mouse click and choose open when done. And I'd like you to do the same, please. All right. Then it comes up, and I don't even know if you can see right now. It brought up a pop-up for me that says, welcome to the Node.js setup wizard. Yours should come up and eventually say that also. I'm just going to click next. It shows you the licensing agreement. I'm going to click the checkbox that says I accept the terms of this agreement, and I'm going to click next again. And it says it's going to store it, at least for me, in C:\program files \Node.js. That's fine. So I'm going to click next again. Then it says for the custom setup, what do you want? We should be able to just leave it exactly the way it is, which means basically give us everything. Click next again. Then it says some modules may be compiled from C, C++ when installing. If you want to be able to do this, so this is the tools for native modules, you don't have to check this. We're not going to do anything with native modules. So click next again. Now it says, do you want to install? So click it again. And it goes through the install process. And mine's done. So I'm going to click finish, and Node has been installed. I can, if I want to, go back and check again in control panel to make sure it's there, but you really don't have to. You'll know real fast. We're going to do another check to see whether it's there or not. But I'm looking at mine, and there's Node.js. All right, it's 74.2 meg is what it says, which actually is not very big when you think that a lot of the software that you have for a lot of the software that you end up using for Windows, like Visual Studio, it's into the gigs. So 74.2 meg is almost nothing. All right, I'm going to have to do a screen, drop my share and do another share in here. So I'm going to do that. Whoops. Do that right now. And I'm going to show you a couple things right now. All right. So first thing I want to show you is I'm going to go back into Visual Studio Code. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to bring up VS Code. But I do want to show you something on this. What we're going to be doing a lot of work in is we are going to be working in what's called the terminal. All right. And what does that mean? Well, notice if I go up to View in Visual Studio Code and I go down to almost the bottom, there's something that says Terminal. So I can click there and it splits my screen into really three pieces: Terminal, Debug Console, and my regular window. If I don't need the Debug Console, I can move it way over. But right now, this is a terminal. What is this? I have set my terminal up so that my default terminal, yours may look a lot different, but I have set mine up so that my default terminal is set to git bash. All right, I'll try to remember to send you an email today because I've got the link. There were several articles, but I found one that I thought was easier than the other ones. Now, do you have to use this? The answer is no. So what do I mean? I'm going to close this terminal. Okay, I'm going to close the terminal, but unfortunately, when I close the terminal, all right, what's going to happen is I'm going to have to do a different share with you. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my file explorer. Right, so let me do a screen share so I can go to the file explorer. All right, so there's my file explorer, and hopefully you can all see it. I'm going to go to my desktop, and it doesn't matter as long as you got a folder. You know, like for instance, I've got this thing with the array exercises in it. You can have just really any folder. It's not going to matter. But I'm going to open the folder, then I'm going to right mouse click and choose Git Bash here. That's the same exact terminal as the one I just showed you. And that will be the same one that you will have in VS Code without having to break off like I'm doing now if you set your default terminal to Git bash, or really to Git. All right, and again, I've got a really nice URL on that. I'll try to remember to do that as soon as we finish up today. All right, in fact, we'll take a break in a few minutes, and when we do, I'll look for it during the break. Okay, all right. Now, if you're here, so if you've done what I asked you to do and you're right here, we can go in and we can check whether or not Node has been put on the system. How do we do that? You type in node space minus V. Node space minus V. That says node space minus version. And if you just did what I asked you to do, you should have the same version as me, 16.17.0. All right. When you went in and you installed Node, you also installed at least the ability to get to something else. And this is a tool that we're going to use. Look at it like this is the world's biggest library, and it's called NPM, which stands for Node Package Manager. So now we're going to type in npm minus v. And again, yours should look like mine. It should say 8.15.0. All right. So we know we've got Node. We know we've got Node, and we know that Node, all right, we know that Node is present on our system. We know we've got access to the Node Package Manager. And I will tell you, because Mr. Smith, who used to be at this college, he and I had some friendly discussions, and that's what they were on this. You don't have to use the Node Package Manager. He liked using a different package manager named Yarn, like yarn of thread, the yarn of string or whatever. But I like NPM better. All right, they work in a very similar method. Okay, then two things I want to show you. I'm going to change my share again, and I want to go back so I can show you and go out to the internet. All right. And the first thing I want to show you here is where we just were, which is Node.js. Okay. Now I'm going to mention a few things to you. Don't worry at all about writing them down or remembering them or anything, but I just want you to understand them. That's what's important to me. All right. So we can peruse our way through here. I'm not going to go through all these. That would be silly. All right. But I want to go to docs. All right. Now, it says here there are several types of documentation available on this website. And the newest one, the one we're using, is 16.17.0. So I'm going to click on that one. Okay. And hopefully you're following along. Either you're watching me or you're doing this yourselves. The reason I'm showing you this stuff is everything that's in here, all this stuff that you see that's in green, it's all hyperlinked. And my guess, there's about 30 things in there. I don't know. I've never counted them. I don't care how many there are. But everything that you see Everything that you see here from assertion testing all the way down through zlib, right? All that stuff is built into Node. In other words, you can use all of that stuff that is shown right there without having to go out to the Node package manager. These are freebies. So for instance, and I'm not going to go through any of these, file system, and you'll notice there's a bunch of things you could do to read files, write files, etc. So there's a whole bunch of them. All right. If instead you needed information about the operating system, you can go out to OS and you can get operating system stuff. All right. If you needed to do stuff that work with your file path, you can go out to path. All right. I'm not going to show you any more of them, but I will tell you at least path we're going to use. All right. At least path we are going to use. All right. I want to mention one more thing that is in here, and I'm going to show it to you. And it's going to be about the last time you ever hear me say it or talk about it. And that is down here, it's REPL, R-E-P-L. All right. REPL is an acronym that stands for Read, Evaluate, Print, Loop. Who cares? I'm just going to show you, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. All right. But what I want to show you is very quickly is this. So let me, oh, I want to go back to there. Let me go back and change my share. Oops. All right. Hopefully what you can see on the screen now is my Git bash window. All right. We looked at that before. So I'm going to clear right now. Let me just clear the screen. If right now I go in and I type in node and I hit enter, all right, I am in REPL. I am in the read, evaluate, print loop. All right. And you might say, who cares? Well, it's very similar to being in the console. And that was one of the reasons I did all those exercises before from the console. The big difference is this. The console that we used earlier does client-side operations. REPL works with server-side operations. Now you can do stuff. I can come in here and I can set up a variable. Let age equal 21. All right. And then I can do a console.log of age. And it says 21. Very similar stuff to what we did before. All right. I can do regular math in here if I want to. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but I can. The reason I'm showing this to you now, and the reason I'm showing it to you like this, is REPL is good if you're learning JavaScript, period, and you want to practice some simple stuff. I'm virtually never going to use this. So to get out, I can either type in exit and hit enter. I thought it was exit, but otherwise I can do a control C and then another control C, and that gets me back out. All right. Oh, it was dot exit. So if I, again, let me clear. So if I go into Node and I want to get out, I can type in, I can do a control D. In fact, that didn't work. Control C, and that gets me out. Or I can type in Node and I can type in dot exit. So why would you ever want to use this REPL thing? All right. And especially when the instructor just said, I'll probably never do anything with it. Well, I'm going to come in here and type in Node again. Now I'm going to type in dot help. And these are the different things that you can do in here. All right. One thing you can do is you can load a file in here and run it. So there are a few times or a few reasons that you may want to use it. Anything that you can do in REPL, as far as I know, you can do without using REPL. But a lot of courses that I've looked at online, a lot of a lot of different articles and stuff. They'll go on and on about this thing. I just have never understood the fascination. All right. All right. So I'm going to leave that up, but I'm going to change my screen share and I'm going to go back to where I was, which is back to the internet here. All right. So that in a nutshell, that is talking to you about Node. Now, going back to the main page, there are other things that are here. All right. There's older versions. Notice there's a guide section with a bunch of articles in it. There's an ES6 section that has a lot of the new types of functions in there, including many of the ones we just were using. All right. And there's some other stuff in here. I've looked at it now and then, but it's been a while. Now, I want you to go out to another website, please. And that is NPM, the Node Package Manager that we just looked at, npmjs.org. All right. This is one of the uglier websites that you'll ever see. So it's the Node, this is the Node Package Manager. All right. And you might say, big deal. Well, I said that in a way it's the world's biggest software library. So imagine that each piece of software that this thing made available was a book. There are somewhere upwards of 1 million books then in this library. So because there are between 500,000 and 1 million different packages that you can actually put in here. So if you remember, one of the exercises that I did earlier for you is we created a thing with heroes and we had some of the Marvel superheroes in there. All right, why am I telling you that? Because I'm going to go into the Node Package Manager and up here where it says search packages, I'm going to type in Marvel and I'm going to hit enter. Click search. So API wrapper for Marvel Comics, Marvel Comics characters, a collection of UI. No, that wouldn't be. So there's 2 of them. So who cares? So I'm going to find this one here, this first one that says Marvel, and I'm going to click on the link. And this has got a world of information in it. What do I mean? The first thing that says here is if you want to install this, this is the code that you can use to install it. If you want to use it, this is an example of how it can be used. It also shows you how many people have downloaded it. Well, 17, so it's not very popular. All right. But I'm just trying to show you in here, it'll always have an install, it'll have examples, and it'll have some metrics in here, some analytics, whatever you want to call it. I'd like you to go back because this is one we're going to end up using within a couple weeks all the time. Type in here in your Node Package Manager search window, type in the word Express and hit enter. All right. And there will be more than one thing that's returned. We want the first one that just says Express right there. So go ahead and click that link. And notice, first of all, a little more popular, 25 million downloads per week. All right. Again, they show you how to install it. And again, they show you how to use it. All right. Now, when a page is important enough, it literally has its own GitHub page. So if I go to this repository here, you're used to seeing this stuff, but notice as I keep going down, boom, there's a whole bunch of information, how to start using it, the philosophy, some examples of using it, security problems, etc. All right. So what I'm going to expect is that if you are told that you are supposed to be starting to add some packages, so you're going to create your own node project, and you should start creating some, adding some packages to it. And if you go, geez, I can't find that, or he said something, I don't know how to spell it or whatever, that you will be able to go out to npmjs.com and find the package you're looking for. All right. Now, one thing you may or may not have noticed, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to change my window again, and let me change it. And this is not my problem. This is a problem in the documentation that we just looked at. All right. Hopefully you see my notepad on screen right now. I'm going to make this real big. 48 should be big enough. So if I wanted to go in and I wanted to install the Express package that we just looked at, I would typically do it like this: npm I express. Why am I showing you this? Because a lot of the documentation still uses the old word install, which you can use. It doesn't matter. All right. But a lot of the documentation has not been updated yet. So rather than using the word or just the letter I, they've got the word install in there. All right. Now, some more of them, because some of them are old, will say install, and then they'll say minus minus save express. You'll see that. This thing is deprecated. If you remember when we looked earlier at the version of Node that we're using, it was like 16.17.0 or something like that. I think it was around version 5.4. They came out and said you don't have to use the minus minus save anymore. You can still put it in. All three of these commands that you see right here, all of them will install Express. Every single one of these will install Express for you. Now, I don't know about you, but if I have my choice, I'll choose the first one. All right. All three of these will install Express, and they will install Express in what's known as, I what is it? I think it's called a production dependency. The wordage isn't that important. All right. Now, what's going to happen very soon in here is you're going to learn what a pain in the butt it is to sit there and have Express running. Oh, I made a mistake. You have to stop your server from running, and then you make your change, and then you start the server up again. Oh, I made another mistake. Then you got to stop the server from running. You got to make your change, and you got to start it up again. And after a while, you're like, my gosh, isn't there a better way of doing this? And the answer is yes. So another thing that we're going to install, all right, is going to be something called Nodemon. But when we install Nodemon, we're going to do it like this. Nodemon is short for node monitoring. And what it will do is it'll make it so that when you make changes to your JavaScript files, you won't have to restart the server. All right. And you might say, well, is that a big deal? It's a big time saver. The minus D that's in there, and it's a capital D, that means that rather than it being a production dependency, it's what's called a development dependency. And you might say right now, is there a big difference? The big difference is when you go and you put your project out on the internet for other people to look at, all right, you don't want to make development dependencies available to them. All right. And again, you might say, well, then how do I do that? You may or may not remember, but if in fact, I'm going to just go out there right now to show it to you because there's two more things I want to show you, then we're taking another break. All right. Now, you all know this. If I go out to github.com, all right, and I come through here and say I want to do a new repository, and I'm the owner, and I'm just going to put in some garbage. All right, that's available. Now imagine I was going to create a new repository, okay? We have never put anything in here, probably, unless you put your own description in. You're typically making yours private. We usually don't have a README, but this is what's going to be important. All right. We're not going to add a .gitignore file here. We are going to add a .gitignore file into our project. One of the things, that we're going to end up putting in there, or basically telling it is, hey, that's stuff that we want the system to ignore. We don't want it to load along with our project. All right. And if that doesn't make sense, you're going to start seeing it in just a few minutes after the break. The last thing I'm going to tell you before we take our break is I'm going back to the Node Package Manager, and I'm going to search in here for Nodemon. And it comes up Nodemon. There we go. Again, over 4 million. You noticed Express was 25 million. This is almost 5 million. The good news is, if you get something that's been downloaded millions of times, you should feel fairly comfortable using it. It's been tested. So they show npm I here, and they don't show the -d. All right. So what happens? Well, if you do it that way, you load it as a production dependency. All right. And you don't load it as a development dependency, which is not recommended. All right. I've got 256. It just changed. So let's come back, please, at 3:05. And I promise you, I'll get you out before 3:30. All right. So let's come back at 3:05, please. All right, it is 3:05. I don't know if I said 3:05 or 3:06, but we are going to start up. Again, my goal is to get you out in just a few more minutes here. I do want to mention, I already showed you Nodemon and where it is, but if we start to look in here under NPM, you'll also notice my SQL. Oops, you have to spell it correctly. MySQL. And there's MySQL. And it says a Node.js driver for MySQL. It is written in JavaScript, does not require coupling, and is 100% MIT licensed. So in other words, when we are working with this, all right, when we are working with MySQL, we will be installing, so we'll be doing the npm I on MySQL. Now let's pretend for a second we wanted to install two packages. We wanted to install both Express and MySQL. You could say npm I MySQL, hit the enter key, and when it comes back, npm I Express, hit the enter key. Or you can say npm I MySQL space Express, and it doesn't matter which one you'd put in first. So in other words, if you know in advance all of the different packages that you want to install, you can put them all in. The other way, what some people do is they'll put in the ones they know they need at the beginning, and as they get working on a project, they'll add more. It doesn't matter which way you do it. You'll notice in here, MySQL has a little less than 1 million downloads, about 880,000. Now, one more I'm going to check for in here, and that is MongoDB, which is the other database we're going to be using. There is the official MongoDB driver. And you'll notice that has quite a few more downloads, more than 4 times. And it's MongoDB. Now, when you use MongoDB, it can be, especially when you first start, it can be very difficult to use. All right. So there's another thing that you typically use with MongoDB that's called Mongoose. All right. And Mongoose, well, what did it say here? It says it's an ODM, which is an object something manager. I'm not sure if it'll say it in here. Object data manager, I would guess. All right. The reason that this stuff in here too is important is not only will there be a repository, but there almost always will be links to the main page. So this, for example, this is the Mongoose. You're going to end up looking at this as we get going. All right, not maybe, you know, well, there's nothing in here I'd like. Yeah, but when you go through the documentation and you want to learn how to do something. Now, I wouldn't get caught up in it now because it probably won't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to you. All right. The next thing I wanted to mention to you, and this is again for the 3 of you and the 3 who are watching at home later or whatever, is I believe 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe all 6 of you had me for the C# class. The reason I'm mentioning that is I believe, and if you don't have it anymore, it won't hurt anything. I believe that all of you, I had at least asked to download XAMPP, also called XAMPP. All right. Now, you may have had that, and you may say, well, yeah, Jeff, I had that before, but I've uninstalled it. Well, and just go back out here and download it again. All right. We are going to use XAMPP or XAMPP. I've heard that's called both, but I like to call it XAMPP because the person who taught it to me, which was a video that I watched, he called it XAMPP. All right. But when we use XAMPP, I just want to show you this. You may or may not remember this. So I just literally told it to bring up XAMPP. And when we did this, I'd always told you to click on the start button here and on the start button here. And if they both turn green, green is good. And right next to the second start button that you just put in for MySQL, If you click where it says admin, that brings up PHP My Admin. This is a way that we can go in and add information, all right, in. This is what we're going to start with next week. I've got a different database for you. We're going to load the database. I'm not going to make you type in. I thought about doing that, but to me, it's just kind of a waste to do that. So we'll have a database. We will import it into our system, and we'll be able to start working with it right away. Now, one thing I'm going to ask next week, and I'll have to prepare this, I don't have it right now, and that is I will be creating some kind of a worksheet that will be asking you to do queries. All right. And you will be doing mainly select statements, but you'll also be doing the rest of CRUD. CRUD again is create, which are inserts, read, which are selects, all right, updates, which are updates, and deletes, which are deletes. So you're going to be doing some of this stuff. So again, if you, especially for those of you who are watching and not here live, please make sure by next week you have installed Node.js or Node. Make sure that, do the Node -v afterwards to make sure it's there. All right. And I will tell you, there's at least a chance. We've got 16.17.0. There's a chance if some of you do it next week, you might have 16.18.0. Right? It's no big thing one way or the other. All right. Okay. So we will be working on that next week. And after we get done with some queries, I want us to do a project because I want us to be able to start putting this stuff together. In order to do that, and in order to be able to start putting this stuff together, and I was going to do this now, but I decided to wait, and I want us to have a whole class period, not the end of a class period, is we are going to go in and we are going to build our first node project. It'll be unbelievably simple. It literally will be less than 10 lines of code. And in less than 10 lines of code, you will have your own server that you've created. All right. Will it do much? Not at all. But then we'll make it do a little bit more, and then we'll make it do a little bit more. And so you might, I'd say, well, big deal. Why should we even care about that? The reason that that is so important is you will be able to use your own machine as both a client and a server. The good news is you can do all your testing like if it was out on the internet. The bad news is that since it's on your machine, other people won't be able to look at it. All right. Now, what we have done in the past is when we get to a certain point, we find a free service where we're able to upload your stuff. And what in the past, we have used Heroku. Okay. So who cares? Well, I got a thing from Heroku today, and I've got to read through this because it sounds like their free package may be going away. And if it is, then I'll have to skedaddle and take a look for another one. I've got a feeling the package isn't going away, but some of the things you can do with it are going away. I'm not sure, but I'm going to check on that. So this is the plan. I just wanted to spell this out for you so you've got an idea of what you're going to be getting into. Next week when you come in, well, first of all, let's start with tomorrow. Tomorrow will be lab for the entire period. That said, I will be spending an hour or so, and it will be taped, but I will go over on that gym website how I did the BMI page and how I did the form page. All right. I will be going over both of them. I'm not going to give out my code, but I'll let you see my code as I put it in. All right. You can do it the way I'm doing it. You can do it your own way. All right. I mean, if one of you turns around and says, well, I didn't do it that way, I think my way's better. Good. Then that's the way you should use. I have absolutely no problem with that. So we'll do that tomorrow. Worst case, that'll take 2 hours. Best case, it'll take closer to an hour. The rest of the period then will be lab. On Monday, when we start, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a fairly simplistic server using Node. We'll add a couple packages. We're not going to do anything with databases on it yet. All right. So we'll do that. That may or may not take most of the period or the whole period or not. I don't know. When we get done with that, we're going to jump headfirst into MySQL and spend the rest of the week talking about MySQL. And ideally, at least, by the end of the week, if not a little earlier, but ideally by the end of the week, we're going to start building our first project. And it will be a Node.js project that will use Express and it will use MySQL. Now, will we be able to get all of that stuff done in 1 week? Probably not, but probably fairly close to a week. Then, after we get down to that point, we're going to do the same kind of thing with MongoDB. If we spend next week and the next week on MySQL and come out with a project that you can hopefully put in your portfolio, I can throw a test in there, and you have got an understanding of how to use this, and we go and use Heroku or something similar to it and have all that stuff out there, that's 2 weeks well spent. Then we'll spend, I guess, probably 2 to 3 or 4 weeks doing the same thing with MongoDB. And MongoDB is a lot different than MySQL. It's not nearly as regimented. There's a lot of differences between them. All right. Why? Because MySQL is an example of an RDBMS. It's a relational database management system. And MongoDB is a non-relational database management system. So the way it does things is different. What you will find is MySQL. All right, MySQL, you may or may not remember this. We did a little bit of work with SQL Server after we did the MySQL work in the C# class. But the syntax was fairly the same, whether you were using MySQL or SQL Server, when you were writing selects and inserts, etc. I'm not saying it was identical, but it was very similar. When you start talking about different types of NoSQL databases, and two of the better known ones are MongoDB and Couchbase. All right. They do things a lot differently from one another. All right. And that's why there's an old joke that if you're using a relational database management system, that SQL is SQL. And that's pretty much the truth. But NoSQL is not always NoSQL. In other words, using different NoSQL packages can be radically different between them. But the idea is once you finish this class, especially for Nicholas and James who are graduating in December, that you have gone through and basically you've gone through beginning and advanced JavaScript. You have got at least an understanding of Node.js. You will have an understanding of Express, of React, all right, and MongoDB. So you are ready to step in and at least start looking for a job as either a back-end developer where you'd be doing Node, etc., a front-end developer where you'd be doing just HTML, CSS, and client-side JavaScript rather, or a full-stack developer where you do both of them. All right, and that's what we're shooting for in the program here. All right. Now, one last thing, and then I'm finished. The two people who are going to graduate in December have already taken the AWD1112 class. All right. And in that class, it was a mobile application development class where we taught Java, you how to write Android apps using Java. There is a chance for those of you who will be taking that class in spring, whether you take it from me or whether you take it at St. Louis, we may drop the Android portion from there. We may not be teaching Java and Android anymore. All right. It may be that we change that class to C#, but you'll be writing C# web applications using something that's called ASP or Active Server Pages .NET. That's being discussed right now, and I don't know. I haven't talked to Evan lately. I don't know if a final decision has been made on that or not. Once I am privy to it, I will tell you about it. All right. And the last thing I'll tell you, I promise. All right. And I may have mentioned this to you already. I may not have. But again, where I'm getting a lot of my stuff from is if you go out to the valleyofcode.com, this is Flavio Copes's website. The thing I started to go over today was his Node.js handbook, which was just updated in July. All right. I'm going to rely on some of his stuff for his React handbook. But the other one I want to show you is the site that's called goalkicker.com. All right. Goal, Goal, kicker.com. And they have free books on all sorts of stuff. They probably have 30 or 40 free books in here. The reason I'm telling you that, they have a Mongo book. They have a Node book, which has got Express in it. And they have a React book. All right. What's the difference between React.js and React Native? React Native basically allows you to run the equivalent of kind of like Android applications that you can write. All right. And these are web, these are desktop more than anything else. Those are the differences. So I just wanted to quickly give you a couple more resources if you're at all interested. All right, in looking at that stuff. So again, last time, if you have not already done so, for Monday of next week, make sure you've got Node downloaded, double check with Node -v, double check that your package manager, which should be just in there automatically with npm -v. And also, if you did your XAMPP a year ago, you do not have to uninstall it and reinstall it. If you want to do that, you can, but you really and truly don't have to. All right, we're just using that as kind of a holder for us to be able to do database operations. And I don't think it's changed much over the last year. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. All right, so with that said, again, tomorrow I am going to go over, where is that? With this. Yeah. So tomorrow I am going to go over, last thing I'll show you, and then we'll be done. I know my share has stopped and I'll fix it in just a second. Almost up. There it is. Come on, there we go. All right, last screen share of the day. Last screen share change of the day, I should say. All right. So tomorrow, what I will be showing, I've asked you to create your own version of this, however it's going to look. But two of the things on there were the BMI page and the contact page. I'm going to show you the code that I used to write both of those pages. If for whatever reason you're like, no, I've already written mine, you don't come tomorrow, I'm not offended. All right. If you do want to show up, that's fine too. That's totally up to you. It will be taped. All right. So I will either see you tomorrow or I will see you on Monday. Have a good rest of the day. Talk to you later.